one planet, 7.3 billion people, only one you. Life offers us many opportunities and learning experiences. Are you ready to explore and discover this beautiful planet, the life and energy all around us, the spiritual world, and what is unseen, along with your own personal soul adventure? Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector, is the spiritual connection you have been prospecting for. Internationally known as a tested and professional clairvoyant medium and spiritual advisor, Marc's work as a metaphysical teacher, medical instructor, radio show host, inspirational writer, and hiking guide are here to help you on a journey of self-discovery, healing, inspiration, education, and a whole lot of spiritual awesomeness. Dare to dream, dare to explore, dare to live. For more information on Marc's spiritual practice in Seattle, Washington, please visit marclainhart.com or internet search The Intuitive Prospector.
right. Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be in this beautiful planet of ours. This is Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector, here for another Metaphysical Mocha Mondays here on the Intuitive Prospector channel page. I hope that you'll join me this morning as we talk about how TNT triggers transformations. So if you're just joining me, let me know where you're from. I'm going to turn the comments off just for right now, just so I can get into today's weekly inspiring message. This show is 30 minutes of inspiration, encouragement, spiritualism, knowledge, education, what I like to say, spiritual awesomeness. If you want to learn more about the work I'm doing, you can find me at marclainhart.com, internet search the Intuitive Prospector, and you can find me through a few professional directories, including Bob Olson's Best Psychic Directory, Shay Parker's Best American Psychics, FamousPsychicMediums.com. Where else? Ariel Spiritual Community. You can find me through Alexa and Echo. Just ask to open up the Positive Living app. You can find me through Om Times Radio and Magazine, through Inspired Living Radio. You can get on my YouTube channel and follow my YouTube, all my YouTube videos if you like. You can also catch me now on Insight Timer. Inspired Living Radio is now on Insight Timer, so if you're not familiar with Insight Timer, check it out. It's thousands and thousands of meditations, spiritual teachers, guidance. A lot of it's free on the smartphone. And if you get on Insight Timer, follow me as a teacher now on that platform and check out an episode of Inspired Living Radio. So good morning to you. Let's take a nice deep breath. Let's move into the magic of the moment. And we do that with a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or a protein shake. I've got both this morning, both protein shake and a cup of coffee. And this morning I'm going to be talking about how trauma and tragedy, TNT, triggers transformation. The same type of work that I'm doing today is because of what I call TNT, the stuff that blew my life up, really. Just like a stick of TNT, dynamite, if you will. I've coined it TNT as trauma and tragedy, and you use the N versus the end. And I'm going to talk about how those tragic events and those traumas can really impact your life, and it can transform you in so many different ways. But what I like to do with all my teaching is to take a nice deep breath, join me in what I call the magic of the moment as you get ready to set your week ahead. Quiet the memories in the past, quiet the imagination in the future just for the next 30 minutes as we move into the magic of the moment. Just take a nice deep breath. Stay with me at 8:30. I'll be going into the Healing Cafe, where that's actually where I do live readings. I'm back in my studio in West Seattle. And I'll have my phone available for readings, inspirations, spiritual chat. So if you want to stop into the Healing Cafe, that follows immediately right after this show at 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I try to go live every Mondays if I can, if I'm not traveling. For those of you that follow my work, I was traveling last week in the nation's capital. I was there for my day job in Washington, D.C. Quite an interesting experience, to say the least. The energy there is quite different. Went to the White House, got caught up in a shooting as I was walking back to my hotel. A guy shot another guy, and they arrested the guy right in front of me, so luckily I didn't get injured with that. And the one gentleman ended up dying that he shot, so it was just kind of crazy right in front of my hotel there on 8th Street, for those of you that are familiar with Washington, D.C. So I did broadcast last Monday, but it was, let me make sure my volume's up, it was in the evening because I was at 30,000 feet flying, but I still got you an inspirational message. So if you want to check that out, go over to my YouTube channel. It's there for review. And that's what happens at 8:30 is this goes over to my YouTube channel, and then I start getting to the Healing Cafe at 8:30. So make sure to follow me, guys, on Insight Timer. Make sure to follow me on Instagram or Twitter. You can look for Marc Lainhart or Inspired for Us. That is the Inspired Living Radio moniker to follow the show. So Inspired for, the number 4 us, or Marc Lainhart on Instagram, Twitter. I'd love to have you follow. I'll be doing a lot more work over on Instagram as well. So today I wanted to talk about post-traumatic growth. Now, a lot of times we talk about post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, something that I have firsthand knowledge of, unfortunately, something that I've experienced in my journeys. But one of the things that I wanted to remind you is, Friedrich Nietzsche talks about that, what doesn't kill us does make us stronger. And there may be a time that you're just feeling like this trauma or tragedy, or what I call TNT, like a stick of dynamite, has blown up your world. And that's what it did to me several years ago with the loss of my brothers to murder and cancer, and my father-in-law to multiple sclerosis, all young ages, my own near-death experience. And it changed me to where I tried to stay the same, and I tried to stay the caterpillar, but through the cocoon phase of the struggle of understanding what death and dying is, what after-death communications are, starting to talk with people that are no longer here, doing hundreds and hundreds of readings now with people locally and around the world, I realized that there was something more energetically, metaphysically, spiritually, even if you apply the laws of physics and science. I really try to bridge that gap between what it is that I do and my analytical mind and my mediumship mind. And it really wouldn't have gone that way if I would not have gone through the suffering or the trauma or the tragedy or the TNT that blew up my life and changed how I look at everything. Like I said, belief systems, relationships, family, all of that changed for me overnight. So if you're just joining, I know it's President's Day, so happy President's Day to those in the United States. If you'd be so kind, please share out if you feel like somebody could be a benefit from today's inspirational, encouraging message. Please do that, because part of my job as the Intuitive Prospector is to help you spiritually prospect for your own spiritual transformations, your own spiritual healing, and most importantly, your own spiritual goal, because everybody's looking for something different. One of the quotes that really sticks in my mind, and I'll be giving you a crystal and a totem animal spirit as well, is something very beautiful happens to people when their world has fallen apart. A humility, a nobility, a higher intelligence emerges just to the point when our knees hit the floor. And boy, I can tell you guys, my knees have hit the floor several times in my journey, even recently within the last 6 months, as I've worked on just some very deep-seated past stuff. Really, falling to the floor and just to the point when you surrender. And it's really interesting when you surrender that you've been fighting so hard against. It's an oxymoron. It's like the more you fight, the more it eludes you, and the more you surrender and let go, the more it comes into your awareness and your orbit and your environment. And there's a quote from Martin Buber that talks about all suffering prepares the soul for vision. I didn't know I'd be doing this work later in life. I just didn't know what to think, to be honest with you. So, trauma is a fact of life. It does not, however, ever have to be a life sentence. I always remind my members in my spiritual development group that we all have a past, we all have a history, we've all made mistakes, we've all had our failures, which is first attempt in learning. But the fact that it happens to you does not have to be a life sentence. It's a life lesson that you can learn from and grow and transform. And trauma, if they look at the studies, when I got into looking at TNT, and that's today's message, how trauma and tragedy triggers transformation. They've looked at studies, how trauma can actually change you for the better. And if you're tuning in today's show, somehow you found your way to my channel, or you're already a spiritual prospector, joining me every Monday on this soul adventure, what we call Metaphysical Mocha Mondays, followed by the Healing Cafe, you know that I talk a lot about transformations, about becoming that butterfly, going from the caterpillar through the cocoon phase, the struggle, pretty much the deliquifying of who you are to become that transformational butterfly of who you can become. And they've looked at PTSD research in science, and they've looked at almost 75% of people in life will experience some sort of traumatic event in their lifeline. Now, I can apply this to even just CPR. I'm a healthcare provider, certified basic life support instructor. In the American Heart Association talks about this, and the fact that you'll have one point in your life, you'll have the opportunity to perform CPR either on a family member, a friend, or a coworker, and that can be traumatic within itself. And that's just how life is going to revolve around us, that you'll have this opportunity. Now, some can go unscathed, some can go through life without anything happening to them, and I bless them. Good for you. I wish I could have been that, but the studies and the science doesn't show that we're all going to, about 75% of us will experience some sort of traumatic experience within our lifetime. Unfortunately for me, I just had mine very early on in age, at the age of 27, when everything started to unfold, and I've been to a lot of funerals. I don't go to funerals anymore because I've been to so many in my lifetime. I always remind people that funerals are for the living, not for those that have crossed over. But just because I've been to so many, that it's really hard for me to go to a funeral. I have my way of paying respect to those that have transferred over into the spirit world in my own way. But you'll find that, traumatic events can transform you and cause great suffering for where you're at. I call it the spiritual struggle. But you don't have to live and marinate in that suffering. And I'm sharing today's episode with you because I've spent many years suffering. And I always remind people that you get to the point where you're done surviving and you start living your life. And sometimes that's including relationships, relationship with yourself, relationship with others, relationships with friends and family. You also start to have a consciousness of who you are and who you want to become. I posted today on the Intuitive Prospector page, I talked about an Eckhart Tolle quote that once you truly move into full awareness and consciousness, than the drama and the the things that you get caught up in. It says when you are fully conscious, drama does not come into your life anymore. And there's a lot of drama out there. And part of the spiritual journey is identifying your higher self and moving into that consciousness where you don't let drama affect you like it once did. Because remember, we're the only species on the earth that creates our own drama, fear, and worry. No other species does that. Everybody seems to get along except for humans. And that's just a quote from Eckhart Tolle, who I love. And when you go through a traumatic experience, there is positivity in that. Back in the 1980s, there were two psychologists, Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun, who started looking at, and they were at the University of North Carolina in Charlotte, and they started how trauma can change people in fundamental ways. And I wanted to share that with you this morning about how TNT, trauma and tragedy, can trigger transformation if you let it. And they've done a lot of studies since the 1980s, and what they had coined from their studies in the 1980s is what we call now, from a positive aspect, from a spiritual standpoint, is post-traumatic growth. So again, there's PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder, for those that have experienced trauma, war, loss of life, near-death experience. My family's had to bury two brothers at the young age. My wife's family had to bury her dad at the young age. Those are all very traumatic, and we've all, not to say that my story is worse off than your story. It's just it's a trauma that can trigger transformation. It can trigger transformation for the negative if you choose to have that experience, or it can trigger you for transformation in the positive. And that's what they talk about, post-traumatic growth, not post-traumatic stress disorder, which we can all suffer from when we've gone through death and dying. One of the quotes that's really helped me in my journey through the trauma is, sometimes in tragedy we find our life's purpose. I would have not found my life's purpose of doing this work, whether it's doing psychic readings, mediumship, healing, lectures, teaching. I love teaching. I love teaching first aid and CPR to the adult learner. I love teaching spiritualism and metaphysics. These are all things that inspire me, and it inspired me to take my Myers-Briggs profile. Now, I have a day job working for the government, taking care of our veterans, so I'm still in service to our veterans with the Office of Inspector General, VA Office of Inspector General, but it's not what I want to do for the rest of my life. It pays the bills, and it's a job that helps others, which I have always been in service. But it really started to get me thinking differently about, what do I want to do with the rest of the time I have on this planet? Your time is your greatest commodity, guys. It's your greatest commodity of what you have. So don't waste your time with, worry, with people that, want more of you. I always say, when you finally wake up and you're no longer manipulated by, people or your job or news cycles, be prepared to be rejected for standing in your authenticity. And it can be hard and lonely, but what it does is, when you have that tragic event and that trauma, that TNT that blows your life up, it does help you to start thinking differently. It rewires the brain. They've looked at studies of how people start to become, their brains start to rewire, where they're not so much in the left analytical side of the brain. They actually move into the right hemisphere of the brain, where Einstein talked about that's the greatest power that comes from the right hemisphere, which is, knowledge and imagination and experiences, versus the left side, which is very much, logic and rational and analytical thinking. But post-traumatic growth can be very transformative. You've never heard of it. It's something that I wasn't familiar with until I actually started going through my life lessons to understand what was going on, going through murder trials and cancer and multiple sclerosis, just losing a lot of different people that I was very close to and I loved a lot. And what I started to realize, it is a choice. And, Henry Ford talked about whether you can or you can't, you're right. And that's true. Just like this is a choice to either pick post-traumatic stress disorder or pick post-traumatic growth, which can be, like I said, very transformative. So today's message here on Metaphysical Mocha Mondays, how TNT, trauma and tragedy, triggers transformations. And it can be quite powerful. Many people I've talked to have had the same kind of experience that I've had, traumatic background, traumatic childhood, lots of dysfunction within the family, lots of, divorces, abuse, whether, physical, emotional, sexual. And I've talked to a lot of people that they start to learn and grow and transform from those experiences, where the healing, that growth begins with the healing from the trauma. And it's not, I'm not saying it's not a free pass to get out of the suffering, because, I've been suffering for several years. But when you get to that point that you don't want to survive anymore and you want to start living, that's where that mindset comes into play, to where you start transforming to move from the caterpillar to the butterfly. Trauma, suffering, struggle, it also gives you the opportunity to reflect. It got me into the point of meditation. Meditation is what opened my door to spiritualism, mediumship, psychic, listening, moving into silence and stillness, and actually moving into more understanding of metaphysics and universal law and quantum mechanics and physics as we know it today. Not just what we see here in the physical world. One example that I like to use is the spiritual wind. We see the wind move the trees, and we see wind move through a hurricane, move objects, but we don't see the wind with our physical eye, but we accept it for what it is. And the spirit world is very much that same way, where they can move upon us without us actually seeing it here, and we can feel it more. And so, the suffering gives you the opportunity to honor your grief. I think it's important to go through the grieving process, to honor your loved ones that have moved into the spirit world, but with the understanding, depending on your belief system, because some people believe in heaven, some people want proof of heaven, and some people believe in no heaven. Everybody has a different belief system, and that's your experience. I'm not here to tell you how to believe or what to believe in God or not God. I just know from my own experiences, from my own near-death experience and the hundreds of readings I've done, that there is an intelligence on the other side of what we see, whether you want to call that God. People say, Mark, are you a man of faith? Are you a man of God? I'm a man of faith. I don't know if I'm a man of God, because I don't know what God is. I know what God is, what's been told to me in a book from several different perspectives, but I don't know what God is in the sense of man, woman, sexless. I don't know. I just know that there's an intelligence and a communication and a love that's on the other side of what we see here in the physical world. And I only came to that through great trauma and tragedy, the TNT that triggered that transformation, that literally blew up my life. And it gave me the opportunity to move into meditations. It gave me the opportunity to move into Qigong. It gave me the modality and the mindset to start working with energy and frequency and vibration, to understand what I was seeing and feeling and hearing, but also a time to rest, rejuvenate, reflect, to honor my grief, because grief's an internal process and it's different for everybody. But when you honor your grief, that's through the process of mourning. However you mourn somebody that's moved on. You see animals do this all the time. They mourn their loved ones through many different rituals. It's very, very powerful if you've never experienced that. But what it does, it gives you the search, the meaning, I guess, of why you're here. And that's how the Intuitive Prospector was created and born, is you're prospecting through your trauma and your tragedies that's triggered the transformation to start prospecting for something bigger and better than yourself, and to move into your authentic self of whoever you may be. And ultimately, it's to become a better version of yourself. And I'll be honest with you guys, when I heard the name the Intuitive Prospector, I'm like, come on, really? That's kind of stupid. My ego was like, that's just... But now I love it, because I teach people how to be spiritual prospectors, to search for their own transformations. A life coach, a medium, a psychic, an inspirational speaker, an inspirer, to get you to search whenever it feels right for you to find that gold nugget. Whatever that gold nugget is, it could be healing, it could be transformation, it could be a life change, it could be the meaning of life. But it's your gold nugget, and what you do with it is makes you the richest prospector out there. And I always like to say that there's an intuitive prospector inside every single one of us. So today I'm talking about TNT triggering transformation, trauma, and tragedy, and how that can trigger that. But check out post-traumatic growth, PTG. Give it a go. Do some research. Do some prospecting. Because there's a lot of psychology into choosing the positive versus the negative. And again, post-traumatic growth is focusing more on your strengths versus your weaknesses. It can help you to recover. It can help you to rejuvenate. It can help you to rest. But if you've experienced trauma or tragedy like I have, and you've gone through those dark nights of the soul, and sometimes it's lonely, you don't know how to reach out. There's a lot of different channels that you can reach out to. I always talk about the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, which is here, and that's 1-800-273-TALK or 1-800-273-8255. It's also suicidepreventionlifeline.org. It's available 24/7, 365. It's free, it's confidential, it's always available. I know for the veterans that I serve in my day job, we have a hotline that they can call if they feel like they're having issues or problems. And we've got a lot of people that are checking out today, guys. We've got, on average right now, the studies are showing about 22 veterans a day are committing suicide. And, the overall study, I pay attention to suicide rates and what's going on. Just even when I was in D.C., a young gentleman died from a shooting, which was senseless. And I'm glad I didn't get shot because I was literally caught. I was literally walking back to my hotel from the White House after doing a show from the White House talking about healing and coming together as a nation. And then there's a shooting, and young kid, not more than probably 18 years old, as they took him in custody. He'd been shot in the leg, it looked like, and just very, traumatic, very, sad. But it's the world we live in, and it's about how we choose how we want to respond to the events, the traumas that come in, and that's what post-traumatic growth can help you with. My mentor's been really big about, my problems are irrelevant. It's about how I respond to the problems that is the most important. And that's just a great reminder because for the work that I do as a spiritualist, as a medium, as a psychic, I get attacked on different fronts, from the religious to being demonic, to being a con artist, to even other people that are in this field, the spiritual snobbery of competition and ego and envy. It's quite interesting to me to get into this field and experience all of that. But I can tell you that the research shows that between 30 and 70% of individuals who experience trauma also have reported a positive change and growth in coming out of that traumatic experience. And again, allow grieving time to, grief doesn't have a calendar, grief does not have a schedule, guys. Grief can stay with you for the rest of your life, and it actually becomes a party and you grow around that. But today I wanted just to remind you about post-traumatic growth is something that you can choose to move into if you've had a TNT, a trauma, and a tragedy that's blown up your life and it's triggered some sort of transformation. That's really what today's message is about. And I hope in some way that it helps. That's why I do these shows. It's my way of giving my time and giving back and helping others. If you want to stick around here at 8:30, we're going to, in about 3 minutes, we're going to move into the Healing Cafe where I'll be taking questions. I'd really like to focus on today's questions. A lot of people just reach out to me, get a reading for the week, and that's fine, in colors and positive mantras. But I'd really, in the Healing Cafe, would really like for you to share a traumatic or a tragedy that maybe has got you thinking about how you want to transform and move into this post-traumatic growth so you can become the better version of yourself. And with that, I want to give you a crystal for the week to help you on your journey. I try to give you things that'll help you if you choose to. You don't have to. But the two stones that I picked this week are pink calcite, and I know Jeanette's watching, so I did say that right, Jeanette. So I've got a team that helps me edit while I'm live on the air, so thank you this morning to my team. I did see Jeanette, and I think Colleen was on as well. So thank you guys. But red calcite is really good. It's the heart crystal, and it's you can use it for a stone of forgiveness. It's kind of a mango color calcite, if you are familiar with the pink or mango color of calcite. But red calcite and pink calcite and mango calcite are really good for forgiveness. They're really connected to the angel realms, if you will, if you believe in the angels. It helps release fear and grief that your heart has kept trapped in for all these years. It increases energy, it uplifts emotions, it aids willpower, and it opens up the heart chakra while removing stagnant energy. And that's the calcite. So either pink, red, or mango-colored calcite for your journey as your prospecting stone for the week. Your number that I picked for this week, believe it or not, was literally relationship change, and it could be relationship with yourself. It's a 5 and a 6. The 5 and 6 adds up to the master number of 11, which is a spiritual teacher. The 5 is kind of finding that freedom, love, and adventure, that childlike behavior within. And the 6 is energy of self-love. The totem animal spirit for this week is the crab. Yes, I did say the crab of the oceans. When you see the crab in your journey this week, it could be that you're about to experience a shift. We are in Mercury retrograde, by the way, so happy Mercury retrograde to all of you that follow Mercury retrograde or lunar cycles like I do. But it also may shift your perspective of your surroundings with the crab, especially in your personal life, and it may be beneficial for your soul's purpose, your soul's path, if you see the crab. So if you any kind of shifts or transformations, always try to look at from the post-traumatic growth viewpoint, because it's helping you to move into your better self, your higher self, even though you may not feel like it at the time. When you're going through this stuff, boy, it does. It sucks. It really does. But in the end, I love what I do. I love helping others. Gone through a lot of stuff myself, but it just helps me to seize the day, Carpe Diem. And it really created my tagline: dare to dream, dare to explore, dare to live, because you don't know when the journey's going to end. So I hope that helps. Again, TNT, trauma and tragedy that triggers transformation. One of the things that I love for positive self-talk is instead of saying I'm damaged, I'm broken, I have trust issues, say I'm healing, I'm rediscovering myself, I'm starting over. Positive self-talk. Again, instead of saying I'm damaged, I'm broken, I have trust issues, say I'm healing, I'm rediscovering myself, I'm starting over. Positive self-talk can be very, 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 very beneficial. And scientists have demonstrated that dramatic positive changes can occur in our lives as a direct result of facing an extreme challenge, whether it's coping with a serious illness, daring to quit smoking, or dealing with depression. Researchers call this post-traumatic growth. And I hope that you'll go prospecting for what that is if you found that TNT has blown up your life and you're looking to start anew and find a way. And with that, I'm going to get ready for the Healing Cafe. It's been a pleasure connecting with you this morning. Join me in the Healing Cafe here in about 1 minute as we get started. And I hope that you have a great week until our next soul adventure together. Be kind, be caring, most importantly, be compassionate. And I'll see you next week as we all dare to dream, dare to explore, dare to live. Have a great week, everyone. Namaste.